Offer people the opportunity for pain relief, right, and improve their quality of life.
Dr. Renee Ditke. She has a doctorate in natural health. She's been empowering people with her knowledge. But before I was ever a doctor, I was a patient, and that's how all the welcome to Natural Talk with Angel. First time live on Facebook. I am going to be interviewing a new friend of mine, Knicole Burchett. Knicole is going to talk to us today about the health benefits of CBD, as well as how it's impacted her and her family. Let me see if I can, there she is. Let's see if I can bring her on camera with us. Well, I don't guess I'm touching it hard enough. Oh, there we go. Her, so be just a second here. It's connecting. There she is. Yay!
We'll get this right. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Knicole is a independent and successful mother of 2 boys. They keep her busy. She's a successful entrepreneur, living her passion, which that is awesome. She's living her passion while helping others to learn to live theirs. It's actually become her goal, passion, and mission to help as many people as she can along the way. So we're going to be talking to Knicole today about CBD and how it has helped her and her son's lives. Welcome, Knicole.
Thank you.
So much for
Thanks
being
for
here
having
with us
me
today.
I never turn down an opportunity to talk and share the mission of CBD. That's for sure.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you. Why don't you start by telling us how did you get involved with CBD? How did you, come to find that this was an avenue for you?
I guess this goes back 3 years now. I should take it back 10 years. When my son started kindergarten around 5 years old, we knew there was something going on with him. I mean, what 5-year-old gets sent to the principal's office every single day, right? Like, I'm like, gosh, they must think I'm like this horrible mother. So years and years and years of, struggling and him in trouble and counseling, they ended up diagnosing him with what you call ADHD. And with that diagnosis came a list of drugs and prescriptions that, we tried to give him to help him feel better, make him act better. So over the span of, 5th grade to 4th, or kindergarten to 4th grade, we'll call it 6-7 years, we probably had 6 or 7 different medications that we had kept trying. Pharmaceuticals, if you will, Concerta, like Ritalin, Prozac. I mean, the poor kid, like, we just kept switching because it always just seemed to make it worse and nothing was better. I mean, the side effects were just horrendous, right? And it was a struggle. I spent, much of my free time that I should have been playing with him or, had him in sports, and I spent in counseling offices and, in meetings and appointments, and the poor kid, his whole life is everybody's like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And it was just heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking. And I finally came to, it was about he was in 4th grade, and he was actually talking about suicide in 4th grade, believe it or not. And I was desperate. I was broke down. But the year before that, a couple people had mentioned CBD to me. And my first reaction was, oh my God, I'm not going to give my kid drugs. I'm not going to give my kid marijuana. Like, what kind of mom, like, who are you? Who do you think you are? Like, I'm not giving my kid pot. And it's funny is it was my lack of education, because here I was drugging my child with pharmaceuticals that is FDA approved, and doing all this damage to my child. But yet I've been trained and programmed, and society has taught us to just say no to drugs, and that, marijuana is a drug and just all this stuff. So my immediate mind was like, I'm not giving my kid a drug, but yet that's all I've been giving my poor kid is drugs. Okay. So I was very.
Hear you say that though about the programming, because that's how most of us have been. We've been programmed to think that pharmaceuticals was the only option,
Right.
And now we're learning and finding out that not only are they not the only option, but sometimes there are worse options. So thank you for mentioning that. Sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's lack of education, and it's definitely programmed by society of my thoughts. And I feel like that's important because I would say 90% of the people out there are feeling what I felt, their instant reaction to being open to CBD as an option, right? Like, they're programmed to think it's bad. So that's going to take generations to rewind and reprogram and reteach. Back in the old days, they used hemp for everything. But our generation, like in the last couple generations, we don't know that. I do believe it'll come back around, in many, many ways. But, we're through this, what's that word? Debatable time, controversy of our beliefs. And so I immediately shot the idea down. This was the year before he, was talking about suicide as a fourth grader. There was a lot of things. He didn't have friends. He, would do try to harm himself or cut his clothes. Like, there's just something going on in there. So after I was desperate, I had a trusted, a lot of this comes back to, who like, and trust. It had been brought to my attention again. Actually, I think he's maybe on the live right now. Keep chess on. He says, hey, you should talk to my buddy Lane about CBD because it's really helping people like this. And I was like, at this point, I am so desperate, I'll do anything. So of course, Lane reaches out to me. We talk for a couple hours. And I said, I'm so desperate. Give me the best stuff you have. I don't care what it costs. Overnight it. I'm desperate. I was actually trying to homeschool him and all this stuff. So that's kind of how CBD came into play. It was about the second to third time it had been mentioned. And I was tired of the 7-year pharmaceutical train and life that it had. I mean, we're talking side effects from, my son's not sleeping. He's having mood swings. Won't eat because the medications make you imagine a coffee pill, where it just sucks your appetite, right?
Yeah.
So now you have a delirious child. He's not sleeping. He can't eat. He's functioning off these highs and lows of these prescriptions. It was worse than dealing with the ADHD. It was worse than that. So that's how CBD came to my life, and I ordered it, and it, was next day to my house, and the rest is history.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question that as a mom who is promoting the use of CBD for her child is probably a given, but for other parents out there who is questioning this, first of all, how safe is the CBD for him to use?
Well, I'm not a doctor. I can't make any claims or cures or, tell you. I have personally never heard a negative side effect or problem. All right. Here we are, fast forward 3 years ago, I've been sharing CBD, and not one person has ever came to me with anything unsafe about CBD. Actually, the only thing that's happened to me is better results. People continue to purchase and use it because of, we'll just use me for an example. I didn't notice CBD right away, but when I went to go take my blood test 9 months later, my little annual, checks that you get,
Yeah.
My blood pressure was down. My sugar levels, diabetes runs in my family. My sugar levels were the best they had been in years. I actually wasn't borderline diabetic. I had lost 30, 40 pounds of birth weight that I couldn't get off. The inflammation in my body kind of disintegrated. There was not one thing that was bad. That was me. I didn't feel this happening, but that was kind of an overall result. From my son, all he did was get better. From the first day of his use, the teacher calls me, the principal called me, and the phone rings every day from the school. I was in that office. If not a phone call or an update or a letter home or an email, or I had to get down there and pick him up, that phone rang. Like, I would just be sitting by my phone. Oh God, I can't go anywhere today because I'm going to get a call and I'm going to have to go take care of my son. And this comes back to, working from home and being able to be there for him, because it was brutal. That's how I lived, like anxious, So I got the call that day. I was like, oh God, like I gave it to him in the morning and I was like, here we go. And the reason I started taking it is because I wanted to feel, I'm not going to give something to my son. It's funny I say this because it's very contradicting. I'm not going to give my son something that I wouldn't do myself. I hear that a lot. But do you think I'm about to put Ritalin in my body, or Concerta in my body, or Adderall in my body, or Prozac in my body? And here I am saying this, and I hear this all the time. Like, if I'm not going to give me it, I'm not going to give my child it. But do you take your child's prescriptions? Hell no. You're not going to take your child's prescriptions because it's going to screw up your brain. Quick story on that. I accidentally took one of his 5 milligram Ritalins a few years before that, and it threw me into this wild panic attacks. Totally different story on that, but you cannot take somebody's prescriptions, right? With CBD, it's like all natural. It works to your body. It goes and fixes what you need and goes to where you need it. You don't have to have a milligram and a dosage and a prescription and all of that. So anyway, the phone rings and I answer it. Actually, let's back up. That day, the phone didn't ring. He came home with, he would get these papers that graded him in each subject from 1 to 3, or 0 to 3. 0 being the worst, horrible day, bad times. 3 being best, best, best. My son always 0 to 1s, 0 to 1, 0 ones for years. He came home with all 3s that day and 1 2. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? So next day comes, because everybody asked me, how fast does this work? It depends on you, but for me, it was for him, it was very, very quickly. The next day he goes to school, that's when the phone call comes. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay, because I wanted to rule out CBD. I wanted to say I tried it and it didn't work, just like nothing else worked. So I'm waiting for day 2 to see if it's still, he's going to get these 3. So the phone rings and they're like, Knicole, what did you do to your child? And I go, what do you mean? What did I do to my child? They're like, he did a complete 360 or 180, whatever you want to call it. He's participating in class. He's like raising his hand. He's sitting in the circle. He's not flipping the lights on and off. He's not like hiding under tables. He's talking to us. And I'm just like, tears start pouring down my face. And I'm like, you're not going to believe what I did. And they're like, no, you need to tell us what you did. Because they had been working with me. They had all my prescriptions and they knew my counselor. They're his counselors. I'm like, I gave him CBD. I felt so, I don't want to say bad, but I was ashamed. Yeah, I felt
because it's taboo. You were probably, because of that preconditioning.
They're judging me, exactly. And they're like, we've heard about that. We've heard about this CBD, because it was kind of just people were hearing about it, but it was taboo, And they're like, wow. They're like, well, whatever you're doing, it's helping and it's working. So we're not gonna they of course, yeah. So of course they won't, prescribe it to him they won't give it to him at lunchtime, right? But they're very supportive on, spending that last 4 to 5 years with me, trying to help him. That it was the only thing that was helping him. So that was day 2 of him on CBD, and we can fast forward. We didn't have another problem that year. Actually, the only time we ever had a little problem is on days where he would be staying with his dads and he would get up and go to school without taking the CBD. To be honest with you, that I always knew, every time the school would call, they're like, Knicole, did he forget his CBD today? And I'm like, yeah, he just went to his dad's, and, he would go to his dad's Thursday nights and dad would take him to school Friday. So of course, you know, some of those times it would be forgotten. But I knew, because I would only get those calls on the days that he did not have that in his system.
Right.
So so when you ask me if it's safe, I mean, to each your own. Like, everybody's body is different. I personally have, you could study it, Google it. I'm not a doctor. I would say make sure you're trusting the brand you're taking. You know, look at what's mixed in it, how they make their products, where you're getting it. Like, do you trust who's making it? Are you picking it up from, you know, a side, like, is it $20 if you're picking it up on the side of the street? I mean,
that was what I was going to ask you next. That
Yeah.
was one of my questions here, was about, I know from my brief time of researching and things with CBD, one of the things that the more reputable companies would talk about was the analysis sheet. And so is that something you would recommend parents learning how to read that analysis sheet and asking for it before they purchase these?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, if you don't have a trusted source of somebody you trust or seen, you know, proof of results, it's always good to say, you know, let me see the analysis. But if you don't know what you're looking at, it doesn't really make sense to look at it. I personally don't know how to read them, never learned. It's funny because people are like, Knicole, you're the CBD expert, but I really know nothing about CBD. I just know it works. And my testimony, and then what happens in their bodies, is pretty much speaks for itself. So you can tell me all day, you know, I have the best company, we're certified, we're this and this, we mix it with this, and we have the stamp of approval. You can tell me all that every day. But if I give it to my child or myself and it doesn't work, I don't care what kind of credentials you have, right? You've got to keep using products until you find a product, a mix, a concoction, how you take it, you know, whether that's under your tongue, subliminally, whether that's in a capsule, whether that's vaping it, whether that's topically. You have to find what works for you and your body. And just because one brand and mix works for somebody, you know, that milligram, it might not work for you. Some people are okay with CBD isolates, right? Just CBD only. Some people need the full spectrum, the whole entire plant, you know, because they all work synergistically together, and it helps your brain, you know. So I personally don't care about a certificate of analysis. However, if you don't trust the source, you know, and you're educated on how to find a good product, definitely. I mean, ask for the proof, and, you know, research and find a person that you know, like, and trust, because that's what happened with me. I trusted the person giving me the product. I didn't even look at the company website. I didn't even read the ingredients. I did nothing. And I lived on that product for 2-3 years.
Well, I do want to bring this up because I do know from my research that what you're saying is true. You need to really know and trust the resource you're getting it from. If you're just getting it from a vendor, you know, not to bash flea markets or anything like that, but if you're getting it from someplace like that, you really don't know what you're getting. And no, not all companies have the same strenuous testing. And so they might get a good batch and do it the way they're supposed to and get a certificate of analysis on that, but every batch they make after that has different, and that's why they can't tell you like the level of THC or the, you know, they're all, and they might tell you, well, it only has, you know, 0.3, you know, percent
less than,
THC,
yeah.
but then if you test it, it might have more.
Yeah, that's a very, very good. That's a very good point, because there's a lot of companies out there that will publish their batch, and everybody's like, look, we have this and this. And we're like, how do we know the bottle you ordered and that you're taking comes from that batch? Like, unless you're going to update every single bottle with, you know, it just gets crazy to me. It's not an important factor to me, but I'm not saying don't do your research. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, I think if you've seen good results with people and you trust them, it's worth, I mean, try it. It's like, I've never seen a CBD hurt anyone. I think there's a joke going around about there's been more deaths from peanuts than marijuana. All right. So, you know, even if you got a bad batch, I don't even think it could hurt you. So if you ask me if it's safe, and I'm not a doctor, I can't say this, I would say safer than your cereal, well, and your soda and your
safer than Ritalin.
And it's funny to me when people say stuff like, yeah, I need to look and research and see what's in it for my child, yet they're popping open a Coke. And I'm like, do you know what toxins are in that soda pop you're giving your child? But yet you're programmed to just do that, you know, to give them cereal and red dye and all this poisonous stuff. You don't ever look at the ingredient. You don't stop and say, oh, what's in this bottle of Coke? You know, but all of a sudden people become researchers when you have something natural. And it's just funny because I was the same way. And I can laugh at it now because I realize like how absurd I was, you know. But I still get it all the time. Just the other day, somebody said to me, oh gosh, you know, my kids have THC in their body. They didn't know it was a full spectrum. And I'm like, that's safer than sugar, my dear. You know,
it actually is. Now,
it's safer than sugar.
For anybody who needs to that works in a profession that you will be drug tested, or if you're looking for a job and you're going to be drug tested, just know that even though it has less than the required, everybody's body is different, so you're not guaranteed to not pop dirty. So I will put that out there because I do have a CDL, and that was one of the things that they put out at my job. So I wish that I could try it because I've heard all the great benefits. I've heard others that have great testimonies like yours about what it's done for them. And I'm like, God, I wish I could. But
yeah, I mean, so honestly, in like my entire 3 years of sharing this with people, I never could tell anyone they won't pop dirty because that, again, we go back to the batch. What if that batch has a little more THC than the last batch took, you know? So you always have to like let people know the risk of failing that drug test. But actually, like in my 3 years, I've never heard of anyone. I did hear of one person who failed an at-home test and they were going to go get a test publicly. I don't know the results of that. But other than that, I have never heard anyone failing. And I actually have people that went down to take a professional test at a lab and still pass. But again, you could get a batch that had a little higher THC content, right? And you could pop that drug test. So it is sad that, you know, some people have to worry about that because it really blocks out 30-40% of people even willing to try CBD that are suffering, you know. But I truly feel, and Nevada was the first state to do this, they've eliminated testing for THC. And I believe states will follow. And I do believe over the next 5 years, we're going to see that as a common denominator of no longer testing for THC, which, I mean, you just have to start to make a change, you know, and that's a big change. And that could open up a lot of doors of people, you know, open, you know, not afraid to try it, right? So I do believe over time we will see more of that and more people willing to not, I mean, a little THC is not going to get you high, right? Like a CBD is not going to get you high, but it doesn't mean you can't fail if the content is high enough, right? Like it's like a poppy seed. If you eat a muffin with a poppy seed, you can fail a drug test, okay? How do we know that you didn't eat poppy seeds? So I do believe we will see that get better.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I want to have you, well, actually what I'll do is tell you if you want more information of a good, reliable source like what Knicole is using, then go ahead and comment below or send a private message and I'll get you hooked up, okay? So
coffee, by the way.
CBD coffee, there you go. So you can really get it in all kinds of forms.
Yeah. Anything, whatever works for you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Nicole,
Yeah.
so much for being here. Thank y'all for watching. This was new for me to start doing these on Facebook, so I kind of like this. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to do more of them this way. So
Yeah.
thank y'all again. Go ahead.
I said thanks for having me.
Thank you. And everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.